talk to me about sort of expectations or modeling out of how humanoid acceptance and that being kind of out there. What kind of numbers does that look like in terms of replacing people and how that maybe helps the economy?
I think a lot of companies already made some announcement. I think especially recently, Amazon was on the headline, right? They plan to use humanoid in their warehouses, logistics, and factories. So same as many auto manufacturers, even NVIDIA themselves, talking about partner with humanoid to manufacture the GPU. So that's a trend. I think it's going to happen because a lot of the job is very repetitive, right? Think about like being just working in a factory, that doing very repetitive work, that requires tons of energy. Is not really, I don't think a lot of people want to do that kind of job.
I am very excited for this conversation, given I just saw Derek the other day. And by the other day, I mean yesterday at the NASDAQ. Was there celebrating Crane Shares' launch of an ETF we're going to be touching on that's going to benefit from a trend that I think everyone knows is coming, but may not realize just how soon in terms of how it comes to fruition in the robotics humanoid space. For those that are watching this live on various platforms, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, I can see your comments, I can see your posts, which means if you want to ask a question during this roughly 45-minute conversation, don't hesitate to do so. I'm happy to bring it up. Let's make this as interactive as possible. With all that said, my name is Michael Guyette, publisher of the Lead Lag Report. This is a sponsored conversation by Crane Shares, one of my clients. And here we've got Derek Yan, who's much taller than he looks on video in person. But Derek, I'm looking forward to this conversation because I was there at the opening bell for COID, where you actually had a robot.
Yeah, that was like an exciting moment. It's like so... I mean, like this very last minute, like we have planned this bell ringing for COID when we launched the fund about like 2-3 weeks ago. Then like we think about why not just bring an actual humanoid to the bell ringing. So that idea was like wild. Then like we look at let's start Googling like how can I buy this? Like this must be like some like website or vendors now available. So we actually found there's like a distributor at Long Island that they partner with a humanoid company called Unitree. Unitree is one of the humanoid leaders in China. They've been, I think, like manufacturing great humanoid with like I think more than 22 degrees of freedom, with tons of like capabilities. Like if like basically you could just programming the way you want. I've seen their videos. Boxing, like running marathon, like doing like flips and back flips. So like those videos like quite amazing. Then like we just call them like, oh, how about let's bring one of your like humanoid to ring a bell. So just like it just happens so randomly, but it shows you that the world is going that direction for sure.
All right, so let's get into it because I'm glad that the robot was short. Right, because I didn't feel that intimidated, right, when I stood next to it. But I took a picture, a selfie, I put on an X of like, me with this thing. And I saw it walking up to the podium, and there was a guy who had goggles, and he was basically trying to, using his hands, mimic how the thing would move. Take us through sort of where we are in terms of the advancement of robotics, of humanoid type entities, for lack of a better way of saying it, and how close are we to these things actually walking around us?
I mean, this is not new, right? Like we have seen like Boston Dynamic. If you follow their like video like years ago, that's a big hype where like, oh, you have like a robot like a dog that can really walk, and then it's like human shape starting to walk like a human, but it's become like quiet for a while. We dive into the reasons like why is that. I think the previous like generation of humanoid or robotics is really getting a direction to solve the engineering problem. So the programmers trying to figure out the best solution for certain engineering, because there's certain degree of freedom, so certain actions can be made if those like components move to a direct a specific angle or move a specific like a power. That's like motion control based on engineering solving problem. But I think these days, the AI is really changing the game. We have seen a lot of new initiatives on the humanoid side because the model training for humanoid is a different direction now. So, like AI is really training the data on the digital world. Now, I think a lot of companies, including NVIDIA, and OpenAI, they're really training the physical data now. They bring the action like grab a water. What does it mean? Like there's certain actions needed to be down to grab a water for a humanoid. You can actually getting that in a simulation with real world actions and data input to really let a robot figure out that simulation. And we have NVIDIA even creating Omniverse, right? You probably seen the Jensen Huang mentioned that in the GTC this year. The Omniverse is really a game changer for the simulation and training for humanoid because that's really creating a perfect environment for the humanoid to get the physical data and the real world data and synthetic that using the synthetic data to train in the Omniverse 24 hours, and you can really make it like scalable. So it's large scale of data training happening in the digital world allow this humanoid to perform much better, right? If you look at it yesterday, how that humanoid is walking at the Times Square, you see it's like real. It's almost like move like a real person. So that level of sophistication and the level of capability and performance is really improving. So the industry is at like an inflection point where the performance of this humanoid is improving every day. So we're almost like in the early time of AI. I was talking to one of my friends yesterday. It's like I found like GPT-3. I think like we talked about GPT-2 when that was created. Then it's not good. But everybody's like shocking when GPT-3 was published. I think we're kind of like in the GPT-2 moment for humanoid. Then everybody gonna be shocking when they actually seeing more and more humanoid is gonna be performed much better. I think the starting from this year is like a pivotal year for a lot of companies to really showing how good the humanoid can do in many tasks.
Who country-wise has the lead from your perspective? Like I see things on X as far as humanoids on, videos coming out of Japan, out of China, and it's actually wild, like assuming it's not AI generated the videos, how advanced and how realistic the movements look. So is it fair to say that maybe America is lagging a little bit on that end, or are we just not seeing the progress?
I don't see anybody's lagging. So in the US, definitely there's a lot of great companies. In the California, we have seen so many like very powerful startups now building like very sophisticated like humanoid, and especially I think the talents in US is unbelievable. Instead of just having a very diversified talent base, you have basically California, right? There's very top talents concentrated in that zone. That's like creating a very amazing ideas to bring to life, right? So you have those humanoid there. I've seen many humanoid. I think Figure AI Sanctuary, the X1 is one of yours, but like they've been doing well. I think like those type of humanoid is really good. I think most importantly is the intelligence is important. Especially, I think there's a lot of kind of like you think like a lot of AI companies also is doing humanoid. So everybody's now competing to create the best model for humanoid. It's kind of like operating system for humanoid. I think that's a competition that US has a great advantage. Especially a lot of companies, they already have a like leap in the AI training. They have data. Companies like NVIDIA, like they work with every robotic company, every humanoid company, and they have factory access. They have like a lot of data access, so they can they have tremendous resources. They're $1 trillion company, most now become the most valuable companies. Tesla can pull billions of dollars just to make it happen, right? So the private sector in the US is really powerful. Sometimes their money is more than like a country. So if those companies want to do something, it's very likely they're going to happen, right? So we have seen data powers moving to that direction. But for international market, for countries like China, Japan, Germany, there's a lot of other, I think, complementary comparative advantage in some point. For China, you see a lot of like Unitree is from China, so great engineers, great like resources to really put everything together. Like we've talked about the China supply chain advantage to really source the most cost efficient component for actuation system, for those motion control bearing reducers. It's like when we look at like even Tesla's plan, Tesla disclosed their like kind of like a cost of building this Tesla Optimus. The cost is very expensive. So far, the cost is very expensive to build a humanoid. It requires, I think, tremendous amount of the components, mainly in the actuators, motors, bearing reducers. So those are really kind of like you need a good supply chain solution. So what China is good at is really in the supply chain side. We've seen a lot of companies now start to work with the humanoid companies to really provide those components, which are critical for the everybody, other consumers and factories to have a affordable humanoid, right? Think about that. Like if you can have a butler or nanny that costs you $50,000, maybe or $30,000 less than a car. Like New York, you find any help like nanny is like I don't know $100 to $200 a day. That's like pretty expensive. So if humanoid can be affordable, I think the use case can be tremendous. So that's why it's very important to have a very scalable supply chain for the humanoid industry. So that's why I think a lot of international market, including China, Japan, Germany, they have a very good previously like auto industry and electric vehicle industry. So those industry, their supply chains actually have this scalable capability to really power Morgan Stanley is projecting 1 billion unit of humanoid production by 2050. So if this industry is at that scale, we need kind of like that supply chain globally to make it happen.
It seems to me that the, and maybe I'm wrong with this, that the real bottleneck here is more on the battery side, right? Like how long humanoids can be active without being charged, right? I mean, like you already have range anxiety in the EV space, right? In terms of how far a car can go once it's charged. Talk to me about sort of the state of just powering these things.
Yeah. So, well, actually, when I was talking with the team yesterday, they have like 4-5 hours of running hours for that humanoid. It's pretty impressive compared to how sophisticated the robot is. Then you definitely like when the humanoid is like smart enough, it's not really just walking every hour, right? So you can just like charging itself or do something like that. So far, the battery industry is really building for, I think, a lot of energy related, right? Like EVs for sure, then battery for energy storage. Those costs is really being, we've seen some like trade frictions and geopolitical interruption on those global markets. So the price is not really dropping that quick. But it's pretty decent. It's very affordable. I think for a lot of humanoid, it's not really the most expensive component of the humanoid so far. So for batteries, I'm not worried because like there's so many other use cases going to drive the demand of the batteries, and then the production is actually at a really good capacity right now. So we think, well, it really depends on how the international trade is going to evolve, because still a lot of batteries really manufactured outside US. So that is, if you want to really like have a domestic supply solution for the batteries, you do need some battery factories in the US to really ramp up. But just overall for humanoid, I don't think batteries is a key bottleneck. I think more the bottleneck is still at the intelligence level. We have seen the machine and the kind of like the hardware level is really good. It's really advanced. The movement, the actions the humanoid can make is really beyond its intelligence. So just like I think I was talking to the founder of the Robo Store, Teddy. He mentioned that actually the system. So yesterday, the Stanford team came to really operating the intelligence of the humanoid. They're the programmers of the operating system for that humanoid yesterday. They're using I think a platform provided by NVIDIA. And what they said is like basically every upgrade is a milestone. So they just upgrade actually like 2 weeks ago, and the walking and running experience is like it's like not real. If you look at like I don't know if you've seen that, like that running is like a human. So that's a recent update. So I think the intelligence part has the tremendous potential because the hardware part, the degree of freedom to allow like certain actions is already very advanced. If you have like good enough models and intelligence for the humanoid, I think these things can really be very useful for many use cases. So I think that's something is gonna catch up in this year and going forward, and at an amazing speed.
Let's talk about how this fits into labor shortages for a bit, right? And this is a very long-term type of discussion because, like you hear the argument that these humanoid robots are not going to like fully replace humans, hyper specialized things, maybe plumbing as an example, right? Will be hard to get replaced, right? But talk to me about sort of expectations or modeling out of how humanoid acceptance and that being kind of out there. What kind of numbers does that look like in terms of replacing people and how that maybe helps the economy?
I think a lot of companies already made some announcement. I think especially recently, Amazon was on the headline, right? They plan to use humanoid in their warehouses, logistics, and factories. So same as many auto manufacturers, even NVIDIA themselves, talking about partner with humanoid to manufacture the GPU. So that's a trend. I think it's going to happen because a lot of the job is very repetitive, right? Think about like being just working in a factory, that doing very repetitive work. That requires tons of energy. Is not really, I don't think a lot of people want to do that kind of job. So there's a shortage for sure. I think in United States, you have seen like tremendous shortage of labor, and same on many other international markets, especially aging population is a serious issue for Japan, for China, and for Europe. So a lot of factory job, a lot of, or even like that is like, chemicals and like dangerous jobs, like it's really not healthy for human. I think those jobs can be easily or more suitable for the first batch of the kind of like have more humanoid, take more responsibility, then human actually can do more safer job and more to come like sophisticated, including like very complicated that still requires human to do and improve the value of human, right? So the low value going to be migrated to the humanoid, where the human's value and hopefully the per capita income is going to increase through this migration. So I think that's kind of like the trend happening right now. Then I would think like we're thinking about like elder care, the shortage a provider for like kind of like the home in the home. There's a shortage of the helpers as well, right? So we like just like I think like the laziness is the number one driver of innovation. Just like the humans, they don't want to do choices. They don't want to take out trash. They don't want to clean up the house after the birthday party of your son or daughter. So I think that's like a big driver as well. When like Humanoid can just clean up the whole house after the weekend birthday party, and you can just enjoy the home. So I think that there's so many like use cases. I think if humanoid intelligence is at another level, that can be really fulfilled by humanoid instead of like hiring someone.
All right. So again, yesterday we got together at the NASDAQ. We did the opening bell for KOID. Talk to me about the KOID fund.
Yeah. So we've been watching at humanoid industry for a while. And then we look at, maybe there's already like an ETF capturing that opportunity. So when we look at the kind of like robotics ETF in the market, actually most companies there is really focused on kind of like industrial automation, industrial robotics. And not many companies really are the suppliers of the humanoid companies. Not so many companies just focus on the humanoid ecosystem. So there's a gap between where this trend of robotics and investment opportunities and what's available on the vehicle side, solution side for investors. So then we come to our index provider and we said, let's do an index that's really just tap into the humanoid opportunity, right? Let's just focus on the humanoid because we believe this is something that's probably bigger or just as big as AI after this trend of the AI is now becoming a mainstream investment opportunity. So then we look at like, how can we really capture this current batch of the investment opportunities? You need the full spectrum of the ecosystem, right? You need the brain, the companies providing the intelligence to power the humanoid. And you need a lot of the components, the body companies, like the suppliers for the humanoid manufacturing, including the actuator company, including the sensor company, including many like bearings, those mechanical system provider manufacturing companies. Those are critical companies because I think like this is like very early stage of this opportunity. So you have to really find the true beneficiaries. So the solvers for this humanoid gold rush. So we think about like the body companies actually can be that role, can be the solvers, like what happened for AIs, like buying GPU chips. You actually need to buy a lot of actuator. You have to buy a lot of motion control. And those companies are going to be very critical. And those companies already have established relationship with the humanoid private companies. So we put a lot of focus on that part. And also critical material. Rare earths is on the headline definitely because of the Trump-Xi negotiation, but rare earths is actually very critical for humanoid as well. So we invest in the three most important rare earths company in the US, Australia, and China in the portfolio. And then we also invest in the pure play, right? The integrators of the humanoid. So companies already make some like very pivotal announcement about the company strategy. Tesla is one of them. I think they're putting humanoids as a very strategic focus for the company, same as Xpeng. And there's some pure play as well in Korea and Hong Kong, including Rainbow and Ubitech. So there's several pure play there. It's a small set, but I think this pure play is going to be more and more as more private companies going to IPO going forward. We're going to include them. So there's more pure play integrators. So that's kind of like the portfolio for this idea. This is whole full spectrum of the investment opportunity behind the humanoid ecosystem, and we believe this is capturing this humanoid opportunity going forward.
what's the split like between the public equity markets in getting involved in the space versus, kind of the smaller VC private side of things?
So I think the private company so far is more on the integrator side and the model training side. There's a lot of data training, data gathering, model developers, and integrators, right? So those companies are critical, but they're still in the private space. So in the public space, we see a lot of companies really, the suppliers, right? So the suppliers for those private companies, that's really creating value and getting a lot of orders and ready to scale their business to power the manufacturing of humanoid. So that is if I don't know if investor is able to invest in those private companies, but the public company is actually getting the first wave of the value because they're kind of like the shoe benefiters. Like you're gonna wait for a lot of the startup to become like fully commercialized and their humanoid is gonna be at scale, but they're gonna start to manufacture that. They have to take Tesla like example. If Tesla gonna build tremendous putting up the investment into humanoid, they're gonna need a lot of suppliers to really build that. So those suppliers is going to be the first kind of like batch of the driver of the humanoid instead of Tesla itself, right? So that's how we think about that. I think at early stage you should focus on the public side because the public side is really going to capture the early wave of this catalyst. And if you have access, yeah, for sure, like there's model companies and there's the kind of like the humanoid, the startups. That's really that the problem is like there's too many, right? There's a lot of startup now building humanoid. There's so many brands in US, in China, in Japan, in German, are now involved in humanoid building. Everybody's now joined this competition, this race to become the next iPhone of humanoid. So we do see it's a little bit hard to figure out who's going to be the winner in the private space. But I think the more or smarter way is really to look at the suppliers because the supplier is going to win eventually, no matter which one going to be going to win this competition, like in the end, right?
So I would think that the real issue, very long term, is trust, right? That it's not going to be like Skynet, right? I think everyone thinks about humanoid robots and they go immediately to Terminator movies, right?
Exactly.
So there's going to be, it's almost, I almost kind of envision there being almost like a PR campaign, right? To try to get people to be comfortable with this from a very long-term perspective, like these things walking around among us. I wonder, how do you think that ends up playing out, right? Because people already social post-COVID, and now you're going to introduce robots.
Right. Yeah, it's just such a cultural thing, right? Think about like different cultures has different perception of humanoid and robotics. In Asian, the animations, like when I grew up, I watched Japanese animation. All the robots and humanoid is really friendly. It's helping the human, right? So talking about like many famous Japanese animation character, they're kind of like friends of human. Instead of like in the US, like in the movies and really it's like Terminators like destroy the human society. I think there's like perception gap between the East and West. So I'm sure like in the Asian markets, probably the home use case is probably going to be adopted sooner than the Western market. The Western market probably going to start with like Amazon in their warehouses, in their or BMW's factory. So I think like there will be different use cases to begin with. Then I think like then people are becoming more comfortable with like a humanoid in the society to allow humanoid to do more work around us, with us. I think that it takes some time, right, to finally become like a real everyday your companion or your like phone, your car, your humanoid. I don't know if like you have a humanoid in your Tesla is going to be charged whenever you're going to use it. They're going to jump out of the car. So that could be something interesting to see. Don't underestimate. Like, I think like each generation have different perception of certain things. Maybe like after 10 years, 20 years, like this, like next generation going to be very comfortable having humanoid be like, oh, that's my phone, that's my car, right? So this is something I think could happen eventually if humanoid is really capable of doing many, many things that like you're gonna rely on that for getting your breakfast ready and like just get everything like exactly the way you want, right? Like without you being doing it. So yeah, so that's something I think very likely.
We should talk about sort of that line that a lot of VC investors like to ask, which is the total addressable market. Like how big is the potential here?
Well, think about like I think there's many estimate of humanoid total addressable market. I think I mentioned several use cases. There's just like recently, most of the Wall Street investment bank actually published a lot of research on this topic. I think Goldman estimated 150 billion revenue for humanoid by 2035. And the most exciting is for Morgan Stanley. They think there will be $5 trillion total addressable market by 2050 globally. So I think like US and Europe and like Asia, there's tremendous use cases, and there's a big addressable market because this is multi-purpose. This is not I think one thing about humanoids very different is it can basically do anything if you program it right? So if a very sophisticated intelligence model, you can let it do anything that a human can do. So the total addressable market is like kind of like the whole labor market could be kind of like addressable, right? So is kind of like I would think if that level if that level of intelligence happening, it will be bigger market than auto market. So today, auto market is a huge market. So I would think like if humanoid become like new auto, it's kind of like a must have for many families. It's gonna be as $5 trillion like Morgan Stanley estimate. So I think that's kind of like very reasonable projection. Same as I think Goldman, UBS, Merrill, they will have a very similar projection of high growth. Both Boston Consulting Group estimate like if this technology is ready, there will be 40% annualized growth every year. So that's kind of like a fast growing market if technology is ready.
When we think about the direction and trend and the companies involved, right? Do you suspect that this is going to be very much a winner take all type of industry, right? Or are there going to be a lot of competitors playing it?
Yeah, it's just very interesting. It's like when first generation, like when ChatGPT was published, right? That we have the same debate. If the OpenAI is going to be the winner take all, or will be different models for different specific competitive edge. I think it's similar here, right? Now everybody's now trying to be the one, right? It could be just like depends like how good one humanoid company be good at. Just like become the iPhone of humanoid, or it can be auto company. Like each company have a different brand, right? Like everyone's like improving a little bit. Mine is cheaper than yours. Mine is targeting the different countries. Like maybe Japan has their own leaders, China has their own leaders. US have one or two leading companies competing, like iPhone and Samsung, right? So I think it will be somehow similar trajectory, like what happened to the phone, to the autos. But I think most importantly is like the humanoid like operating system can be interesting because now you only have two, right? Like almost like just two or three, right? But like iOS and Android is really dominating. So iOS is really just like controlling, right? So basically, you will have like some company like NVIDIA or doing OpenAI become like an operating system for humanoid. That's really outperform everybody else. Then maybe they start doing the hardware themselves and control every details to really maximize the potential of their operating system. Or you're gonna have more like Android, right? It's open sourced. Then there's very flexible customization to do many, like uploading new application on the humanoid to do different things every day. That's I think it's very likely be that dynamic. I think for humanoid. So yesterday we have the programmers from Stanford, their team called OpenMind. So basically, they're trying to be that kind of one of the is the early stage of that operating system. But there's so many competitors out there trying to be that brain. So I would think this is very dynamic at this stage, but eventually it will be like iPhone or like I like the auto market.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting observation. Talk to me a little bit about, you mentioned that KOID is using an index, right? So I'm going to assume that there's going to be new stocks that, over time will be added to that index, and certain criteria have to be met. So what are those types of criteria? How does a company be classified as something that's playing in this theme?
Yeah, so the index is really centered around how much the company is involved in humanoid, or is a supplier for the existing humanoid companies. So either you meet either one of the criteria, you're going to be included into the index by a score. So the universe is broad, is like global companies. So it's like thousands of companies in the universe. And based on those two criteria, the top 50 companies going to be selected into the portfolio, and it's going to be equal weighted. So each company is going to be 2%, are the rebalance quarterly. So every quarter there'll be a evaluation of that involvement and the supply chain. Then build around the ecosystem I just mentioned, the brain, the body, integrators. You have a portfolio of equal weighted 50 names. That's going to be humanoid related. So that's kind of like a methodology of the humanoid, because this is still at the early stage. So we do need some diversification. I think diversification is very important for any type of investment like this, because that's gonna not miss any of the kind of like maybe there's something that's going to do very well, but you do want to reduce the volatility because this is the early stage, right? So the diversification going to benefit, I think, investors when it comes to constructing a more forward-looking portfolio like this.
So you use the right word there, portfolio. So how should we think about this from a portfolio perspective? Meaning, should one see this as a straight up tech replacement, as core, as thematic? I mean, what's the right category? And have you seen some others talk about how to figure out how to weight it?
Yeah, it's I think nowadays it becomes very challenging to think about like traditional asset allocation, because I think traditionally a lot of people just put like growth or value when it comes to constructing their equity portfolio, but this or just become like very passive, like putting on S&P 500. But I think like we're at a very interesting moment at this stage where the economy is slowing down. We're seeing like generally a much higher valuation for the US compared to the national market. Yet there's some singular growth opportunity out there, namely AI, and maybe after AI is humanoid. So how do you really incorporating those two kind of like as a construct your equity portfolio, right? So it's a challenging one, because if you look at like the long term, if your portfolio horizon is like 5 to 10 years, there's many estimate like the AI and humanoid, those type companies going to be maybe 70% of the total market cap because they're the singular growth trend that's happening in the world today. So how to really position that, right? Like, I would think at least if you think about like based on the risk profile of each portfolio, I think like if you think about your growth portfolio, majority of that should be tied into the long-term singular growth trend that's around artificial intelligence and around humanoid. So I think that's like assume you have, I don't know, like 20% or 30% in your growth, then the majority part of that should be tied to those themes because those themes are really driving the singular trend of growth happening in this world. Yeah, so that's kind of like how I think about the allocation of that. Kind of like what the two mega trends that's happening right in the world.
Derek, for those who want to learn more about the fund and CraneShares at large, tell them where they can go and any other things we may have missed that you want to address.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so CraneShares, we publish everything related to these humanoid ETF, ticker KOID, KOID, at craneshares.com/KOID. So that's kind of like the product page for the fund. You can basically find the prospectus, we have a very sophisticated presentation people can look at. There's fact sheet, and we have tremendous articles that we're going to write about this industry and the portfolio companies and how do we think about investing in the humanoid industry. So that's a very good thing. I would recommend that's like a go-to place if you want to know about humanoid investment. So craneshares.com/KOID. That's where like people can go.
Enjoyed the conversation. Thank you everybody for listening. Again, this will be an edited podcast under Lead Lag Live, and I'll see you all on the next episode. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers, everybody.